Under the searing lights of the studio, tension filled the air. The debate stage was buzzing, the cameras were rolling, and millions of viewers sat at home, waiting to see sparks fly. At center stage stood Congressman Adam Schiff, known for his sharp tongue and no-nonsense demeanor. Across from him, calmly seated with his signature Southern drawl and a twinkle of mischief in his eye, was Senator John Kennedy. Nobody expected what was about to unfold, a clash so fierce, so raw, that it left the audience gasping in disbelief. The debate began predictably enough. Schiff launched into a fiery monologue, accusing Kennedy of being out of touch, dismissing him as a politician who hid behind witty one-liners instead of real policy. His words dripped with disdain, his voice rising as he painted Kennedy as a man unfit to lead, someone who cared more about sound bites than substance. Schiff's confidence was unshakable. He knew how to dominate a debate, and he was determined to make Kennedy look small. But Kennedy didn't flinch. He sat with his hands folded, his eyes steady, letting Schiff's words hang in the air like heavy smoke. When Schiff finally paused, expecting Kennedy to stumble or get defensive, the senator leaned into the microphone with that trademark calm. His voice was slow, deliberate, almost playful. "Well, Adam," Kennedy said, "that was a mighty fine speech. The problem is, it sounded like you practiced it in front of the mirror instead of in front of the truth." The audience erupted in laughter and gasps, but Kennedy wasn't done. Schiff, visibly annoyed, tried to cut in, but Kennedy raised his hand gently, signaling he hadn't finished. "You see, Adam, folks don't need another politician wagging his finger and acting like he's the smartest man in the room. They need honesty, they need humility, and they sure don't need someone who thinks shouting louder makes him right." The words cut through the noise like a blade. Schiff's jaw tightened, his face reddening as the audience murmured. Kennedy had flipped the energy of the room in seconds. What had begun as Schiff's grand stage was quickly slipping away from him. Schiff tried to regain control. He launched into statistics, charts, and accusations, waving papers in the air. "This isn't about clever words, Senator Kennedy," he snapped. "This is about responsibility, about the facts, and you refuse to face them." Kennedy waited, letting the storm rage. Then, with a sly grin, he leaned forward again. "Adam, you remind me of a man standing on a sinking ship, yelling at the water to stop rising. You've got passion, I'll give you that, but passion without wisdom is just noise. And right now, all I hear is noise." The silence that followed was deafening. The audience leaned forward, hanging on every word. Even Schiff looked momentarily stunned. Kennedy's words weren't just a comeback, they were a mirror held up to Schiff's fury, exposing the emptiness beneath it. The moderator, sensing the shift, tried to move on, but the crowd wasn't ready. Kennedy pressed on, his tone growing softer, more heartfelt. "Look, Adam," he said, "we can play this game of who can insult you better, but at the end of the day, the American people don't care about our egos. They care about their jobs, their families, their safety. They don't want the circus, they want leaders who will roll up their sleeves and do the work. I may not be the fanciest man in this room, but I'll tell you Thesa, I'll never talk down to the people who sent me here. And maybe that's why you're struggling to understand me." The room broke into applause, scattered at first, then swelling into thunder. Schiff, visibly shaken, adjusted his tie and muttered under his breath, but the damage was done. Kennedy hadn't just outmaneuvered him, he had outclassed him. As the debate wrapped up, Schiff tried to regain composure, but it was clear the tide had turned. Kennedy walked off stage to a standing ovation, while Schiff avoided eye contact with the crowd. Backstage, reporters swarmed Kennedy, asking how he managed to stay so calm under pressure. He chuckled softly and replied, "It's simple. I just listened to him long enough to know what he cared about most, and it wasn't the people he serves." The moment went viral within hours. Clips of Kennedy's savage comeback were replayed across social media, hailed as one of the most devastating and eloquent shutdowns in live TV history. But for Kennedy, it wasn't about scoring points or humiliating an opponent. Later, in a quiet moment, he told an aide, "Politics isn't about winning arguments, it's about winning trust. If I ever forget that, I don't deserve this seat." And that's what left the audience in shock, and not just the sharp wit of a single line, but the deeper truth behind it. Kennedy reminded everyone that humility, honesty, and courage speak louder than anger and arrogance. The night would be remembered not just as the evening Adam Schiff was silenced, but as the moment John Kennedy showed the world that true leadership isn't about shouting the loudest, it's about speaking the truth, even when it cuts.